Dad drained my college fund to cover my brother's gambling debts. Mom said, Max needs it more than you. When I went to the bank to close my account, the manager pulled me aside and murmured, "You need to see this." My parents never anticipated what happened next. What happens when the people you trust most in the world, the ones who are supposed to protect you, steal your entire future? My own parents looked me in the eye, wiped out my life savings to pay off my brother's gambling debts, and then told me with a straight face, he needs it more than you. Can you even imagine? It was just this morning. I stood in my childhood bedroom, my hands trembling, staring at the acceptance letter from Columbia Medical School. The words shimmered, a beautiful promise of everything I'd worked for. I'd made it, me. Then my parents walked in. Their faces were grave. I knew instantly something terrible was coming. My dad cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. "Almeida, we need to talk about your college fund. I've emptied it to pay Max's gambling debts." My mom gently touched my shoulder, her voice soft but firm. "Family comes first, sweetie. Max needs this more than you need medical school." My entire world just crumbled. In that one moment, my future, my dreams, everything I'd built was gone. Stolen. 3 days later, I still couldn't process it. The house felt different, like every corner held a betrayal I hadn't seen coming. I sat at the kitchen table, pushing scrambled eggs around my plate, while my mom hummed softly at the stove. She was acting like this was any other morning, like she hadn't just taken $180,000 of my money and handed it over to my brother. "You should eat something, honey," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "You've barely touched your food." I wanted to scream. How could she stand there, making breakfast, pretending everything was normal? "I'm not hungry," I managed, my voice flat. Memories flooded back. Every single one a testament to how hard I'd worked for that money. Since I turned 16, I'd juggled 3 jobs. Weekday mornings, I was at the coffee shop near school by 5:30 a.m. Evenings, I tutored younger kids in math and science. Weekends, I filed papers at a medical clinic, soaking up every bit of knowledge about the profession I dreamed of entering. Every single paycheck went straight into that account. Every birthday card with money from relatives. Every academic scholarship I'd earned through countless hours of studying. And then there was Grandma Eleanor's contribution, the biggest chunk of all, $50,000 she'd left specifically for my education when she passed 2 years ago. I remembered her weak, determined voice, holding my hand in the hospital. "Your future matters, sweet girl. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She'd made me promise to become the doctor she knew I could be. Suddenly, a sound from the living room caught my attention. The unmistakable, incessant beeping of a video game. My stomach turned. I pushed back from the table and walked toward the noise. There he was, Max, my 28-year-old brother, sprawled across Dad's leather recliner, game controller in his hands. Empty soda cans and chip bags littered the coffee table. "Oh, hey, sis," he said, not even looking away from the screen. "Mom's making pancakes later if you want some." The sheer casualness of his greeting ignited something hot and furious inside me. "Are you serious right now?" He paused the game, finally meeting my eyes. What? "You stole my entire future, and you're asking me what?" Max rolled his eyes. He actually rolled his eyes. Then he unpaused his game. "God, you're so dramatic. It's not like you can apply for loans or something." "Loans?" My voice cracked. "Do you have any idea how long I worked for that money? How many 16-hour days I put in?" "Look, I didn't ask Dad to raid your college fund, okay? He made that choice. Because of your gambling debts. How much did you lose, Max? How much was my future worth to you?" He shifted uncomfortably, but kept playing. "It's complicated." "No, it's not complicated. It's a number. How much?" My mom appeared in the doorway, dish towel in her hands. Almeida, please. Your brother's been through enough. He's been through enough? I whirled to face her. What about what I'm going through? Sweetheart, you have to understand. Those people he owed money to? They weren't the kind of people you can just ignore. They made threats. So, you sacrificed my education to save him from his own choices. My dad entered from the garage, oil stains on his shirt. He'd been avoiding me since the announcement, hiding in his workshop or under the hood of his Chevrolet. That's enough, Almeida, he said, his voice carrying the tone of authority I'd respected my whole life. Not anymore. No, Dad, it's not enough. I want to know everything. How many times have you bailed him out before this? My parents exchanged a look that told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't the first time, not even close. How many times? I pressed. Mom sank into a chair, suddenly looking years older. A few times. Define a few. 4, Dad admitted. This was the 5th. And how much in total? Silence stretched between us until Max finally spoke up, without looking away from his game. About $300,000 over the past 6 years. My legs felt weak. $300,000. They'd been hemorrhaging money, trying to save Max from himself, while I worked myself to exhaustion for every penny. But this time was different, Max added, as if that made it better. This time I was in real trouble. I'd figured out a system for online poker and sports betting. It was working great until it wasn't. There's no system for gambling, you idiot. I shot back. The house always wins. You don't understand how it works, he said defensively. I was up huge at one point, almost $500,000. I could have paid everyone back and had money left over. But you didn't stop. I was going to. I just needed one more big win to set everything right. Dad stepped forward. The people he owed weren't patient anymore. They showed up at his apartment. Then they found out where we lived. So you gave them my money? We gave them what we had to give them, Almeida, Mom said, tears streaming down her face. To keep our family safe. Now my entire college fund, $180,000, gone. We'll figure something out, Dad promised. Maybe a payment plan with the school or... Columbia doesn't do payment plans for medical school, Dad. You either have the money or you don't. And thanks to you, I don't. I turned to leave, but Max's voice stopped me. You know what your problem is, Almeida? You think you're better than everyone? Acting all high and mighty because you got into some fancy school. No, Max. I don't think I'm better than everyone. I just think I deserve what I earned. Family comes first, he said, echoing Mom's words. Isn't that what we were always taught? Family doesn't steal from family, I replied. As I headed back to my room, I heard Mom sobbing and Dad trying to comfort her. They were acting like they were the victims here. I closed my door and pulled out my laptop. I started researching student loans. The numbers made me sick. Even if I qualified for the maximum amount, I'd graduate with over $400,000 in debt. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel, my best friend since middle school. How did the parents take the news about Columbia? Bet they're super proud. I stared at the message, not knowing how to explain that my parents had just guaranteed I'd never make it to Columbia at all. Another text came through. Hello, Earth to Almeida. You're killing me with the suspense. I typed back slowly. Can I stay with you for a few days? I'll explain everything. Her response was immediate. Of course. What's wrong? What was wrong? Everything. My brother was a gambling addict who felt no remorse. My parents were enablers who chose him over me. And I was the fool who trusted them with my future. I pulled out the acceptance letter again, running my fingers over the Columbia letterhead. All those years of work, all those sacrifices gone. Because my brother couldn't walk away from a poker table. But the worst part, the absolute worst part, was looking around my room. All the medical textbooks I'd bought. The stethoscope Grandma Eleanor had given me for my 21st birthday. The vision board covered with pictures of doctors I admired. I'd built my entire identity around this dream, and my family had sold it off like it meant nothing. A knock on my door interrupted my spiral. "Almeida." It was Dad's voice. "Can we talk?" "There's nothing to talk about. Please, just give me 5 minutes." I opened the door to find him holding a manila folder. "What's that?" "Documents from the bank. I thought you should see what we were dealing with." I took the folder and flipped through the papers. Withdrawal slips, transfer authorizations. My signature on every single one, except I'd never signed these documents. "Dad," I said slowly, ice forming in my veins, "these have my signature on them." He couldn't meet my eyes. The bank required dual authorization for withdrawals over $10,000. I had no choice. "You forged my signature. You committed fraud against your own daughter." "I was protecting the family." "No," I said, handing back the folder. "You were protecting Max, and you made me collateral damage." As he walked away, shoulders slumped, I made a decision. Tomorrow I would go to the bank. I needed to know exactly what had happened to my money. Every transaction, every detail. Because something about this whole situation felt wrong. Not just morally wrong, but factually wrong. The numbers didn't add up. If Max had owed $180,000 in gambling debts, why did these documents show transfers totaling over $200,000? I grabbed my coat and car keys. Screw waiting until tomorrow. I was going to the bank right now. But as I passed through the living room, I froze. Max was on the phone, speaking in a low voice. "No, I told you I got you the money," he said. "My family came through." "Yeah, the full amount." "What do you mean it's not enough? We had a deal." He noticed me standing there and quickly ended the call. "Private conversation," he muttered. "Who was that?" "Nobody. Business stuff." "Business? You haven't had a job in 2 years. You don't know everything about my life, Almeida. Apparently, I don't know anything about anyone in this family." I left him there with his video games and his secrets, but his words echoed in my mind as I drove toward the bank. What did he mean? It wasn't enough. They'd given him everything I had. The bank would be closing soon, but I had to try. I needed answers, because suddenly I wasn't sure my brother had been honest about his debts. And if he'd lied about that, what else had he lied about? As I pulled into the parking lot, I saw Mrs. Patricia Holbrook's car still there. She'd been our family banker for 15 years. She'd helped me open my first savings account when I was 10, proud of the $20 I'd saved. If anyone could help me understand, it would be her. I just prayed she'd be willing to tell me the truth, because I had a sinking feeling that what I'd discovered so far was just the tip of the iceberg. And my family? We were all in way deeper than any of us realized. The First National Bank of Chicago stood before me like it always had. But today it felt different. Today, I wasn't here to deposit my hard-earned wages or scholarship checks. I was here to close what remained of my account and salvage whatever dignity I had left. Robert, the security guard, recognized me immediately. "Almeida, haven't seen you in a few weeks. How's medical school planning going?" The question felt like a knife twisting in my chest, but I managed a weak smile. "It's complicated." "Well, I'm sure you'll figure it out. You always were the responsible one in your family." If only he knew. I walked past the familiar teller windows. Sarah, who'd always complimented my dedication, gave me a wave. Marcus, who'd helped me set up my high-yield savings account, called out a greeting. These people had watched me save every penny for 6 years. Now I had to face them, knowing it was all gone. "Almeida, is that you?" I turned to see Mrs. Patricia Holbrook emerging from her office. Late 50s, silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun. She'd been more than just our banker. She'd taught financial literacy classes at my high school, encouraging students to save wisely. She'd suggested the specific account structure that would maximize my interest earnings for college. "Hi, Mrs. Holbrook," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She studied my face with those sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. "Come to my office, dear. You look like you need to sit down." I followed her past the cubicles to her corner office. Diplomas and banking certifications lined one wall. Photos of her grandchildren decorated her desk. It was a space that radiated warmth and trustworthiness. "Tea?" she offered, reaching for her electric kettle. "No, thank you. I'm actually here to close my account." Her hand paused mid-reach. "Close it? But you just got into Colombia. Your father mentioned it when he was here last week." "Yes, well, circumstances have changed." She settled into her chair, fingers steepled. "Almeida, I've known you since you were 10. I've watched you save methodically for 12 years. What's really going on?" "My father already told you. He made the withdrawals." "Yes, he did. All $217,000 worth." I blinked. $217,000? He told me it was $180,000. Patricia's expression darkened. "I see. Well, that's concerning in itself. But there's more we need to discuss." "More?" She turned to her computer, typing rapidly. "When your father came in for the first withdrawal, something struck me as odd. You'd specifically set up your account to require dual signatures for any withdrawal over $10,000. Do you remember doing that?" "Of course. You suggested it as a safety measure." "Exactly. Yet your father had documentation with your signature authorizing these transfers." My throat felt dry. "He forged them." "I suspected as much," Patricia said quietly, "which is why I documented everything meticulously. I also activated our security protocols." She turned her monitor toward me, showing a series of bank documents. Each one bore a signature that looked like mine but wasn't. The forgeries were good, but not perfect. A slightly different curve on the a hesitation in the D that I never had. "I couldn't refuse the transactions with the documentation he provided," Patricia continued, "but I could ensure everything was recorded." "So you knew he was stealing from me and did nothing?" "I did something, Almeida. I followed federal banking regulations to the letter, including the requirement to report suspicious activity." My heart skipped. "You reported it?" "Not yet. I wanted to speak with you first, but there's something else you need to see." She pulled up security footage on her screen. "This is from last Tuesday at 2:15 p.m. I watched grainy footage of my father entering the bank, but he wasn't alone. Max was with him, and so was another man I didn't recognize. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive-looking suit that seemed out of place in our suburban bank. Who's that with them?" Patricia's voice dropped lower. "That's Vincent Torino. He's what we in the banking industry call a person of interest." "What does that mean?" "It means he's suspected of running illegal lending operations. Loan sharking, to be blunt. We've had federal alerts about him for the past 3 years." I stared at the screen as the 3 men approached a teller window. My father looked nervous, constantly wiping his forehead. Max kept glancing at the exits. But Vincent Torino stood perfectly calm, like he owned the place. "They weren't paying off gambling debts to some casino," I said slowly. "They were paying a loan shark." "That would be my assessment," Patricia agreed. "And based on Mr. Torino's presence here, I'd say your brother was in significant danger." "But why would Max borrow from a loan shark if he was gambling online?" Patricia pulled up another set of documents. "That's what puzzled me, too. So I did some digging. These are the transfer destinations for your funds." I scanned the list. Multiple transfers to offshore accounts, cryptocurrency exchanges, wire services that specialized in untraceable transactions. "This is sophisticated," Patricia noted. "Not typical for covering gambling losses. This looks more like money laundering," I finished. "I can't make that accusation officially, but yes, the pattern is concerning." I thought back to Max's phone conversation, his insistence that he'd paid the full amount. Mrs. Holbrook. Is it possible my brother was into something more than just gambling? She leaned back in her chair. In my 30 years of banking, I've seen all sorts of financial crimes. Gambling addicts typically have messy finances, but straightforward debts. This, she gestured at the screen, this is organized, deliberate. What should I do? First, you need to know that I'm required by law to file a suspicious activity report. The forgery alone mandates it. But combined with Mr. Torino's involvement and these transfer patterns, I have no choice. Which means federal investigators will be looking into this within 72 hours. Your father will likely face charges for the forgery. Your brother's activities will be scrutinized. Your family's assets may be frozen during the investigation. The room spun slightly. All of them, even my parents' retirement. If the investigators believe the accounts are connected to criminal activity, yes. But they're victims, too, in a way. My father was trying to protect Max. Patricia's expression softened. I understand that, dear, but the law doesn't make exceptions for good intentions. Your father committed fraud. That's a federal crime. She opened a drawer and pulled out a business card. This is the person I'll be filing the report with, Special Agent Diana Morrison with the Financial Crimes Division. She's thorough but fair. I took the card with numb fingers. Will I get any of my money back? That depends on what the investigation uncovers. If the transfers can be proven fraudulent, there's a possibility. But if the money's already been dispersed through offshore accounts, it's most likely gone. We sat in silence for a moment before Patricia spoke again. Almeida, there's one more thing. Your grandmother's contribution to your fund came with specific legal stipulations. Do you remember the details of her will? I tried to focus through the fog in my brain. She said it was for education only. More than that, she established it as an educational trust with you as the sole beneficiary. Your parents had no legal right to touch that money, forgery or not. Hope flickered in my chest, so I could recover at least that $50,000. Potentially more. The trust included provisions for damages if the funds were misappropriated. You'd need an estate attorney, but you might have grounds for recovering the full amount plus penalties. Why didn't the bank protect those funds separately? Because your father presented himself as the trustee when he consolidated the accounts 5 years ago. Another forgery I'm now realizing. I laughed bitterly. Is there anything in my life he didn't forge? I'm sorry, Almeida. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. No, I'm glad you told me. At least now I know the full scope of what I'm dealing with. Patricia stood and walked around the desk, placing a maternal hand on my shoulder. You're a brilliant young woman. Don't let this derail your dreams completely. How can I not? Medical school starts in 3 months, and I have $17 to my name. $17 and the truth, she corrected. That's more than your family has right now. As I prepared to leave, Patricia called out one last time, Almeida. When the investigators contact you, and they will, tell them everything. Don't try to protect your family. They made their choices, and now there are consequences. What about Max? If he really is mixed up with dangerous people? That's for law enforcement to handle. Your job is to protect yourself and your future. I left the bank feeling simultaneously vindicated and terrified. The security tapes, the forged documents, the connection to Vincent Torino, it all painted a picture far worse than simple gambling debts. My family wasn't just in financial trouble. They were in legal trouble, criminal trouble. As I sat in my car, staring at Agent Morrison's business card, my phone rang. It was Mom. Where are you? She asked, panic evident in her voice. Max just got a call. Those people want more money. They're saying the payment wasn't enough. I'm at the bank, Mom, and we have bigger problems than whatever Max owes. What do you mean? Dad's forgeries were documented. The bank is filing federal reports. There's going to be an investigation. Silence. Then you talk to them about this? How could you betray your family like that? I didn't betray anyone. Dad did when he stole my future. We're your parents. We fed you, clothed you, sheltered you for 22 years, and this is how you repay us. By expecting you not to steal from me? Yes, Mom. That's exactly how I repay you. She hung up. I sat there for another 10 minutes, watching the sunset over the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, my brother was making deals with dangerous people, using money that was supposed to fund my dreams. My parents were probably huddled together, figuring out how to blame me for the tsunami about to hit them. And I was sitting in a bank parking lot, holding the business card of a federal agent who would soon be dismantling my family's lies. But Patricia was right about one thing. I had $17 and the truth. And sometimes that's all you need to start fighting back. I pulled out of the parking lot with a strange sense of calm. Let the investigation come. Let them uncover every forgery, every lie, every betrayal. Because I was done protecting people who'd never protected me. As I drove, I made a mental list of what I needed to do. Find a lawyer who understood educational trusts. Cooperate fully with the federal investigation. Start applying for every scholarship, grant, and legal loan I could find. And most importantly, stop believing that family came first when that family had proven I came last. My phone buzzed with another call from home. I let it go to voicemail. Whatever crisis they were manufacturing now, it wasn't my problem anymore. I had my own future to salvage. And if I had to build it from $17 and the ashes of my family's crimes, then that's exactly what I'd do. I'd been staying at Rachel's apartment for 3 days, trying to process everything Patricia Holbrook had revealed. Her pull-out couch wasn't comfortable, but it was better than being under the same roof as my parents. I'd just finished submitting online applications for emergency scholarships when Rachel burst through the door. Almeida, there are federal agents at your parents' house. My mom just drove by and saw 3 black SUVs in the driveway. My heart hammered. I grabbed my keys. Despite everything, they were still my family. I have to go. Are you insane? You just told me your dad committed fraud. I can't let them face this alone. Rachel caught my arm. They let you face losing your future alone. She was right, but I couldn't shake the image of my mother's terrified face. I'll be careful. The 15-minute drive to my childhood home felt like hours. Sure enough, black government vehicles lined our quiet suburban street. Neighbors stood on their lawns, openly gawking. Mrs. Chen from next door caught my eye and quickly looked away. By tomorrow, the entire neighborhood would know the Reynolds family was under federal investigation. I parked behind the last SUV and walked up the driveway on shaking legs. The front door stood open, voices carrying from inside. I'm telling you, I acted alone. My father's voice, strained and desperate. My wife had nothing to do with this. Mr. Reynolds, we have evidence suggesting otherwise. A woman's crisp voice responded. Lying to federal agents is a crime unto itself. I stepped inside to find my family huddled at the dining room table. 3 agents in dark suits stood around them. One was a woman in her 40s with sharp features and calculating eyes. She noticed me immediately. You must be Almeida, she said. Special Agent Diana Morrison, Financial Crimes Division. The name from Patricia's business card. So the investigation had moved even faster than predicted. I confirmed, trying to keep my voice steady. Good. We have questions for you as well. My mother looked up, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Almeida, tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them we're a good family. Agent Morrison pulled out a chair. Please sit. We were just discussing the forged signatures on your account withdrawals. I sat down, avoiding my father's pleading gaze. What do you need to know? Did you authorize your father to withdraw $217,000 from your education savings? No, I only learned about it after it was gone. She's lying. Max interjected. She probably forgot she signed those papers. Agent Morrison's partner, a younger man with kind eyes, slid a document across the table. Mr. Reynolds, are you suggesting your sister signed this authorization on March 15th, when credit card records show she was in Wisconsin for an academic conference? Max's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I'd forgotten about that conference on molecular biology. For days in Madison. Paid for by a research grant I'd won. First, maybe I got the dates mixed up, Max stammered. You seem to mix up a lot of things, Agent Morrison observed. She pulled out a tablet and began scrolling. Like your employment history. You told your family you lost your job at Henderson Financial 2 years ago due to downsizing. That's right, Max said, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Interesting, because Henderson Financial's HR department says you were terminated for suspicion of insider trading. They filed reports with the SEC. My mother gasped. Max, is that true? They couldn't prove anything, he muttered. No, but the investigation did uncover your gambling problem, Morrison continued, which is how you ended up owing money to Vincent Torino. At the mention of that name, my father went rigid. We paid him. Every penny he was owed. Dad insisted. Did you? Morrison's tone suggested she knew otherwise, because Mr. Torino's associates seem to think your son still owes them quite a bit. In fact, they're under the impression Max has been selling them something other than money. I don't know what you're talking about, Max said, avoiding eye contact. The third agent, who'd been silent until now, placed a laptop on the table and turned it toward us. Then perhaps you can explain these communications from your encrypted messaging app. The screen showed conversation threads with usernames like VT_money and Torino_collects. But it wasn't the names that made my blood run cold. It was the content. Package delivered. Names and socials as requested. One message from Max read. Another. Got 12 more from the company database. Same price as before. You were selling personal information. I breathed, horror washing over me. From Henderson Financial's clients. Those are privileged financial records, Agent Morrison said, including social security numbers, bank accounts, investment portfolios. Perfect for identity theft and financial fraud. My mother started sobbing in earnest. Max, how could you? I had no choice. He exploded, slamming his fist on the table. They were going to kill me. Do you understand that? Actually kill me. So, you gave them the tools to destroy other people's lives instead? I asked, my voice laced with disgust. Don't act so righteous, Almeida. You have no idea what I've been dealing with. Then enlighten us, Morrison said coolly. Start from the beginning. Max looked at our father, who nodded slightly. With a heavy sigh, my brother began his confession. It started 3 years ago. I was doing well at Henderson, but I wanted more. Faster cars, better apartments, the whole lifestyle. Sports betting seemed like easy money at first. It always does, the younger agent murmured. I had a system, Max insisted, that familiar delusion creeping back into his voice. Statistical analysis, probability matrices. For a while it worked. I was up big, really big. How much? Morrison asked. Almost $500,000 at one point. I wanted to scream. He'd had enough to pay for my medical school twice over. But you didn't stop, Morrison prompted. I was going to. Just needed one more big score. There was this sure thing inside information about a game, which was a setup, Morrison finished. Torino's people fed you false information to hook you deeper. Max nodded miserably. Lost everything in one weekend. And then some. When I couldn't pay, they offered me a deal. Information from Henderson's databases in exchange for reducing my debt. Which is why you really lost your job, I said. They caught you accessing files you shouldn't have. I was careful, but not careful enough. Agent Morrison leaned forward. How much information did you steal, Max? I don't know. Hundreds of profiles, maybe more. Try thousands, the quiet agent corrected. We've been tracking the identity theft ring connected to Torino for 18 months. Your data contributed to over $3 million in fraudulent activities. The number hung in the air like a toxic cloud. My mother had stopped crying, staring at Max like she'd never seen him before. My father sat with his head in his hands, but I stopped. Max said weakly, "When I lost the job, I stopped giving them information." "No, you just found new ways to pay," Morrison said. She pulled up bank records on her tablet, like convincing your father to take out a second mortgage, telling him it was for gambling debts, when really, Torino was blackmailing you about the stolen data. Another piece clicked into place. That's why Dad was so desperate. He wasn't just protecting Max from physical harm. He was protecting him from federal prosecution. "Bingo," Morrison said, "though I'm afraid that ship has sailed." She stood, and her partners followed suit. "Maxwell Reynolds, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, and violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act." "No." My mother lunged forward, but the younger agent gently held her back. "Mom, don't," I said. "You'll only make it worse." As they cuffed Max, he looked at me with genuine fear in his eyes. "Almeida, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far." "Yes, you did," I replied. "Every time you chose to steal instead of stop. Every time you let Dad bail you out. Every time you picked your addiction over your family." They let him out in handcuffs as neighbors openly stared and photographed. My mother collapsed into my father's arms, but he was looking at Agent Morrison. "What about the house?" he asked. "The mortgage?" "That depends on your cooperation," Morrison replied. "The forged signatures alone could result in serious charges. But if you're willing to testify about your son's activities and your interactions with Torino—" "I'll do whatever you need," my father said quickly. "Just please, my wife wasn't involved." Morrison studied them both. "We'll need to verify that. In the meantime, your assets will be frozen pending investigation. That includes all bank accounts, retirement funds, and yes, the house may be subject to seizure if we find it was used as collateral in criminal enterprises." "Where will we live?" My mother whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's something you'll need to figure out. I suggest finding a lawyer. A good one." As the agents prepared to leave, Morrison handed me a card. "We'll need your full statement tomorrow, 9 a.m. at the Federal Building." "I'll be there." She paused at the door. "Your banker, Patricia Hullbrook, she spoke highly of you. Said you were the only honest one in the family." "I don't feel honest. I feel like I should have seen this coming." "Victims often blame themselves. Don't. Your brother made his choices, and your parents made theirs. The only choice you're responsible for is your own." After they left, the house felt hollow. My parents sat at the table like broken dolls. The neighbors had retreated indoors, but I knew the damage was done. By morning, everyone would know the Reynolds family had harbored a criminal. "This is your fault," my mother said, quietly, not looking at me. "My fault. If you hadn't gone to the bank, hadn't talked to them." "Mom, Max was selling stolen identities. Dad committed fraud. How was any of that my fault?" "We could have handled it as a family, like you've handled everything else, by covering it up and enabling Max." My father finally spoke. "She's right, Helen. We created this mess. Don't you dare take her side." "There are no sides here," I said, exhaustion washing over me. "There's just the truth. And the truth is, you chose Max over everything else. Over me, over your retirement, over your home. And he played you for fools." "He's our son," my mother insisted. "And I'm your daughter." But that never seemed to matter as much. I stood to leave, but my father caught my hand. "Almeida, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am so deeply sorry." I looked at his weathered face, saw the man who taught me to ride a bike, helped with science projects, the man who'd also stolen my future without hesitation. "I know you are, Dad, but sorry doesn't get me into medical school." As I drove back to Rachel's apartment, my phone buzzed with messages. Word was already spreading. Former classmates expressing shock. Extended family demanding explanations. Everyone wanting to know how the responsible Reynolds kid could have a criminal for a brother. But one message stood out from an unknown number. "Miss Reynolds, my name is Jonathan Sterling. I'm a forensic accountant who specializes in recovering assets from financial crimes. I believe I can help you reclaim what was stolen. Call me." I pulled over and stared the message. After everything that had happened today, I should have been suspicious of strangers offering help. But what did I have to lose? My family was shattered. My brother was in federal custody, and my parents would likely lose everything. Maybe it was time to stop playing defense and start fighting back. I saved the number and continued driving. Tomorrow, I'd give my statement to the federal agents. But tonight, I'd call this Jonathan Sterling and find out if there was any hope of salvaging my dreams from the wreckage of my family's crimes. Because Agent Morrison was right about one thing. The only choice I was responsible for was my own, and I chose to fight. 2 weeks passed since the federal agents arrested Max. My parents' house stood empty now, a for sale sign planted in the yellowing lawn. They'd moved into a cramped apartment on the other side of town, their assets frozen by the government. I hadn't spoken to them since that horrible night. I sat in a downtown coffee shop, nervously checking my phone. Jonathan Sterling had agreed to meet me here, and I'd spent the morning researching him online. Former federal prosecutor turned forensic accountant, specialized in asset recovery and financial crime investigation. His record was impressive, but I couldn't shake my wariness. After what my family had done, trusting anyone felt dangerous. Almeida Reynolds. I looked up to find a man in his early 40s with salt and pepper hair and intelligent brown eyes. He wore a well-tailored suit, but carried himself without the arrogance I had expected. "Mr. Sterling." "Jonathan, please." He sat across from me, declining the barista's offer of coffee. "Thank you for meeting me. I know this must be a difficult time." "That's an understatement." He pulled out a leather portfolio and placed it on the table. "I'll be direct. I've been investigating Vincent Torino's organization for 2 years. Your brother's case intersects with my investigation in significant ways. Why would a forensic accountant investigate a loan shark?" "Because Torino isn't just a loan shark. He's built a sophisticated financial crime network. Identity theft, money laundering, cryptocurrency fraud. Your brother was one small piece of a much larger operation." I leaned forward. "And you think you can help me recover my money?" "I think we can help each other." He opened the portfolio, revealing documents I recognized, bank statements, transfer records, but also papers I'd never seen before. "Your grandmother, Eleanor Matthews, was a shrewd woman," he said. "When she established your educational trust, she included very specific legal protections." He showed me a document titled Irrevocable Educational Trust. My grandmother's signature sat at the bottom, along with a notary seal and witness signatures. "This trust wasn't just a gift," Jonathan explained. "It was a legally binding entity with you as the sole beneficiary. Your parents had no authority to access these funds. Patricia at the bank mentioned something about this, but my dad said he was the trustee." He lied. The trustee is actually a law firm, Matthews and Associates, your grandmother's maiden name, not coincidentally. My heart raced. So the $50,000 she left me should still be protected? But there's more. He pulled out another document. "This is a provision your grandmother included. If anyone attempted to misappropriate the trust funds, they would owe triple damages plus interest." Triple. $150,000, plus interest accrued over 2 years. We're looking at approximately $170,000. I stared at the papers, but my parents don't have that kind of money anymore. No, but their homeowner's insurance does. Fraud is often covered under personal liability policies. Plus, there's another avenue. He pulled out a newspaper clipping. Henderson Financial, your brother's former employer. What about them? They failed to properly secure their client data. They knew Max had gambling problems and suspicious financial activity. Yet they allowed him continued access to sensitive databases. That's negligence. You think they'd be liable? I've seen settlements for far less egregious security failures. But I'd need inside knowledge about their systems, their security protocols, information you might have gleaned from Max over the years. I thought back to all those family dinners where Max bragged about his job, the access he had, the important clients he managed. Details I'd barely paid attention to at the time. I might remember some things, I said carefully. But why are you doing this? What's in it for you? Jonathan leaned back, a slight smile playing at his lips. Fair question. I work on contingency for cases like yours. I take 30% of what we recover. But more importantly, your case could be the key to unraveling Torino's entire operation. How your brother kept records, meticulous ones, according to the federal investigation. Messages, transactions, names of other Henderson employees who might have been compromised. With your help, I can trace the money flows, identify other victims, and build a comprehensive case. The feds are already doing that. The feds are building a criminal case. I'm building a financial one. Criminal convictions are satisfying, but they don't get victims their money back. Civil actions do. I considered his words. What would you need from me? Access to any family financial documents you can legally obtain. Your memories of Max's work discussions, cooperation in depositions, and most importantly, your grandmother's original trust documents, which I believe are stored at her attorney's office. How do you know that? Because I called them this morning. He smiled at my surprise. I don't approach potential clients unprepared. Matthews and Associates confirmed they have the originals and are willing to pursue action against your parents for breach of fiduciary duty. My parents could go to jail. Your father, possibly. The forgery charges are serious, but if he cooperates fully and agrees to restitution, he might avoid imprisonment. Your mother appears to have been genuinely ignorant of the specifics. We sat in silence as I processed everything. Outside, Chicago bustled with its usual energy. People hurrying to jobs, living their lives, unaware that entire futures could be stolen by those they trusted most. There's something else, Jonathan said, his tone shifting. Torino's organization has been destabilized by the federal raids. They're scrambling to cover their tracks, which means they're making mistakes. Your brother recorded conversations with them. Why would he do that? Insurance? Probably. Criminals rarely trust each other. He pulled out a tablet and showed me a transcript. The FBI recovered these from his cloud storage. He was trying to build leverage, planning to blackmail them if needed. I read Max's words, documenting meetings, threats, names of others involved. My brother might have been a criminal, but he'd been a meticulous one. This is evidence of racketeering, I said. Exactly, which opens up RICO statutes. Triple damages again, but this time from Torino's assets. The FBI has frozen approximately $12 million in various accounts connected to his organization, and victims can claim portions of that. If we can prove damages, yes, your $217,000 could potentially become $650,000 in a RICO claim. The number made me dizzy. Enough for medical school and more. Enough to rebuild everything that had been stolen. What about Max? I asked. If I help you, what happens to him? Jonathan's expression softened. Your brother is looking at significant prison time regardless, but cooperation could reduce his sentence from 20 years to perhaps 7 or 8. And he'd have to cooperate. His recordings are evidence, but testimony would strengthen the case immeasurably. I made my decision. I'll do it. I'll help you. You're sure? This won't be easy. You'll have to testify, possibly multiple times. Your family relationships may never recover. They're already destroyed. At least this way, something good might come from the wreckage. Jonathan extended his hand, and I shook it. Partners, then. First step is meeting with Matthews and Associates tomorrow. Can you make a 10 a.m. appointment? Yes. Good. Bring any documents you have regarding your education savings, bank statements, scholarship letters, anything showing your pattern of saving. He stood, then paused. Almeida, I want you to understand something. What happened to you wasn't your fault. But what happens next? That's entirely in your control. After he left, I remained in the coffee shop, staring at the business card he'd given me. Jonathan Sterling, Forensic Accounting and Asset Recovery. On the back, he'd written a personal cell number and the words, "Call anytime." My phone buzzed. Rachel asking how the meeting went. I typed back, "I'm fighting back." Her response was immediate, about damn time. That evening, I drove to my parents' old house. The lockbox on the door meant realtors were already showing it. I still had my key, and legally, some of my belongings remained inside. I found what I was looking for in the basement storage room, a box labeled Almeida's school records. Inside, every bank deposit slip I'd saved, every scholarship notification, every birthday card from Grandma Eleanor with checks enclosed and notes about your future, sweet girl. But at the bottom, I found something unexpected. An envelope in my grandmother's handwriting for Almeida, open only if needed. Inside was a letter, dated a year before her death. My dearest Almeida, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong with the trust one established for you. I've watched your family dynamics for years, seen how your parents favor Max, despite his problems. I pray I'm wrong, but I fear they might someday prioritize his needs over your dreams. Know this. I've protected you as best I could. The trust has safeguards even I haven't told your parents about. The law firm has instructions to pursue anyone who tries to steal your future. You are the only one who visited me those last months, who cared about my stories and dreams. You have a healer's heart, but also a warrior's spirit. Don't let anyone, not even family, diminish your light. Fight for what's yours, sweet girl. I'll be watching over you. All my love, Grandma Eleanor. I sat on the basement floor and cried, not from sadness, but from gratitude. Even in death, she was protecting me. Tomorrow, I'd meet with her lawyers and begin the process of reclaiming what was mine. But tonight, I had one more task. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Max's number in the Federal Detention Center. He was allowed 1 call per week, and he'd been trying to reach me. Maybe it was time to answer. Not to forgive, but to offer a deal. His cooperation for my support during his sentencing. Business, not family. Because Jonathan was right. What happened next was entirely in my control, and I was just getting started. 3 weeks into working with Jonathan Sterling, I found myself in a position I never imagined. Sitting in an FBI safe house, preparing to help take down the people who had destroyed my family. The small apartment smelled of stale coffee and stress, with federal agents rotating shifts to monitor surveillance equipment. Agent Diana Morrison sat across from me, her expression grave. Your brothers agreed to cooperate fully, but we need your help to make this work. What kind of help? I asked, though I suspected I already knew. Jonathan, who had become my constant advocate through this process, leaned forward. Max's recordings implicated several high-level members of Torino's organization, but they're incomplete. We need context, details. Only family members would know. You want me to talk to my brother? More than that, Morrison said. We need you to get your parents on board. They've been reluctant to fully cooperate, still trying to protect Max even now. I laughed bitterly. Of course they are. Your mother's been visiting him weekly, Morrison continued. She might have information she doesn't realize is important. Conversations Max had at home, people he mentioned, timeline details. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. You okay? Haven't heard from you all day. I quickly typed back in a meeting. We'll explain later. There's something else, Morrison said, pulling out a file. Torino's people have been asking questions about you. My blood chilled. What kind of questions? Where you're staying, your daily routine, whether you've been in contact with law enforcement. She slid a photograph across the table. A man in a leather jacket, photographed outside Rachel's apartment building. Recognize him? Antel, Anthony Torino, Vincent's nephew. He's been watching your friend's place for 3 days. Fear crawled up my spine. Is Rachel in danger? We don't believe so. They're interested in you specifically and what you might know about Max's record-keeping. Jonathan placed a protective hand on my shoulder, which is why the FBI wants to accelerate the timeline. The longer this drags out, the more dangerous it becomes. What do you need me to do? Morrison outlined the plan. It sounded like something from a crime movie, not my life. Max would wear a wire to his next meeting with his lawyer, who they suspected was feeding information to Torino. My parents would be brought in for family counseling. That was actually a detailed debriefing. And I would need to maintain my normal routine while under federal protection. Absolutely not. I said, I won't put Rachel at risk. We'll have agents watching the apartment, Morrison assured me. That's not enough. I should leave. Find somewhere else to stay. That would signal that you're aware of the surveillance, Jonathan interjected. Right now, they think you're just a naive college kid who got caught up in family drama. Let them keep thinking that, Morrison added. It's your best protection. That evening, I returned to Rachel's apartment with 2 undercover agents following at a distance. Rachel was making pasta, singing off-key to Taylor Swift, blissfully unaware of the danger I had brought to her doorstep. There you are, she said, waving a wooden spoon. I was starting to think you'd been abducted by accountants. Something like that. I forced a smile, hating that I couldn't tell her the truth. We ate dinner while she chatted about her job at the marketing firm, her new gym routine. Anything but the elephant in my life. As she cleared the dishes, my phone rang. Mom. I almost didn't answer, but Morrison's words echoed in my mind. We needed their cooperation. Hello. Thank God. My mother's voice was strained. I've been trying to reach you for days. I've been busy. Please, honey, your father, he's not doing well. The stress of everything. His blood pressure is through the roof. The doctor says he needs to avoid additional strain. Then maybe he should have thought about that before committing fraud. How can you be so cold? We're your parents. Who stole my future to enable Max's criminal activities? Sorry if I'm not overflowing with sympathy. She started crying. We just wanted to help him. You don't understand what it's like to watch your child spiral out of control. No, but I understand what it's like to watch your parents choose that child over you again and again. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Mom, but I'm dealing with it. Are you? Silence stretched between us before she spoke again, her voice smaller. The FBI wants to interview us again. Together this time. They say it's routine. But your father thinks they're trying to trap us into saying something incriminating. Maybe because you have incriminating things to say. Almeida, please come with us. Having you there might help us remember things correctly. I almost refused. Then I remembered Morrison's plan. When? Tomorrow at 2 at the Federal Building. I'll be there. But, Mom, this is the last favor I do for you. After this, we're done. Don't say that, honey. We're family. No, we were family. Now we're just people who share DNA and bad memories. I hung up before she could respond. Rachel appeared in the doorway, concern etched on her face. That sounded intense. Family drama. What else is new? She studied me carefully. There's something you're not telling me. I wanted to spill everything. About the safe house meetings, the surveillance, the danger I'd put her in. Instead, I shrugged. Just legal stuff. Boring paperwork. Right. She clearly didn't believe me, but didn't push. Well, if you need to talk. I know. Thanks, Ratch. That night, I lay awake on the pull-out couch, listening to every sound. Was that footsteps in the hallway or just neighbors? Was that car engine idling too long outside? Every noise felt like a threat. At 3 a.m., my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Your brother talks too much. I sat bolt upright, heart pounding. Another text followed. Family should stick together. Remember that. With shaking hands, I forwarded the messages to Morrison and Jonathan. Morrison replied within minutes. Stay put. Agents are watching. Do not engage. Sleep was impossible after that. I sat in the dark, clutching a kitchen knife I knew would be useless against real danger, waiting for dawn. The next afternoon, I met my parents at the federal building. They looked older, grayer, diminished. My father's hands shook as he signed us in at security. My mother clutched her purse like a lifeline. Thank you for coming, she whispered as we rode the elevator. I didn't respond. The interview room was sterile and intimidating, with recording equipment visible on the table. Morrison was there, along with another agent I didn't recognize and a court reporter. This conversation is being recorded, Morrison began. You're not under arrest, but you are expected to tell the truth. Lying to federal agents is a crime. Do you understand? My parents nodded, looking terrified. Good. Let's start with Max's gambling. When did you first become aware of it? What followed was 2 hours of painful revelations. My parents admitted to knowing about Max's problems for over 5 years. They'd paid off smaller debts dozens of times, always believing his promises to quit. They'd hidden it from me, ashamed and hoping to protect the family image. Tell me about Vincent. Torino, Morrison said. When did Max first mention him? About 8 months ago, my father said. Max came home beaten up, black eyes, split lip. He said he owed money to dangerous people. Did he mention specific names? Vincent, Anthony, someone called the banker who handled the money. Morrison and the other agent exchanged glances. Did Max ever mention keeping records of his dealings with these people? My mother shifted uncomfortably. He said something once about insurance, that he was protecting himself. How? I don't know. He was drunk, rambling about how they'd never hurt him because he had dirt on them. When was this? Maybe 6 weeks ago, right before. She glanced at me. Before we took the money. Did he say where he kept these records? No, but... My mother hesitated. But what? Morrison pressed. He was paranoid about his laptop. Wouldn't let anyone near it. Even installed new locks on his bedroom door. More questions followed, each answer painting a clearer picture of Max's descent into criminality. By the end, my parents looked exhausted and defeated. As we prepared to leave, Morrison pulled me aside. You did good getting them here. Their testimony helps establish timeline and pattern of behavior. What happens now? Max meets with his lawyer tomorrow. If our suspicions are correct, that meeting will tell us who's leaking information to Torino. And if it doesn't, then we go to Plan B. She didn't elaborate on what Plan B entailed. Outside the federal building, my parents hovered uncertainly. Almeida, my father started. No, I cut him off. I did what you asked. We're done here. Please, just let us explain. Explain what? How you chose Max over me. How you stole my future. How you're still, even now, more worried about him than the daughter you betrayed. I understand perfectly. I walked away, ignoring my mother's sobs and my father's calls. But as I reached the corner, I spotted him. Anthony Torino, leaning against a building, watching me. He didn't try to hide or look away. Instead, he smiled and gave a small wave. The message was clear. We know who you are. We know where to find you. I kept walking, forcing myself not to run, knowing federal agents were somewhere nearby. But the fear sat heavy in my stomach. Tomorrow, Max would wear a wire into a potentially dangerous situation. His cooperation could bring down Torino's entire organization, or it could get him killed. And if it went wrong, I had no doubt who they'd come for next. As I entered Rachel's building, I made a decision. After tomorrow, regardless of what happened with Max's wire, I was finding somewhere else to stay. I wouldn't put my best friend in danger any longer. But first, we had to get through the next 24 hours and hope that my brother's desire for self-preservation was stronger than his history of making catastrophic choices. The federal courthouse in downtown Chicago loomed before me like a mountain I'd been climbing for months. Today was the day everything would either come together or fall apart. Max was testifying before the grand jury, and Vincent Torino's entire organization was about to face justice. Jonathan Sterling stood beside me on the courthouse steps, his presence a steady comfort. Remember, you don't have to watch the testimony. You can wait in the witness room. No, I said firmly. I need to see this through. 6 months had passed since that terrifying day Max wore a wire to meet his lawyer. The recording had been devastating proof that the lawyer was indeed feeding information to Torino's organization. The FBI had used it to flip him, and like dominoes, others in the organization began cooperating to save themselves. Inside the courthouse, Agent Morrison met us at security. Your brother's in protective custody. He'll testify via closed-circuit video for his safety. Is he really in that much danger? I asked. 3 of Torino's associates have already pled guilty and provided information about planned retaliation. So yes, the danger is real. We made our way to a secured viewing room where families of witnesses could watch the proceedings. My parents were already there, sitting in the front row. My mother had lost weight, her face gaunt with stress. My father looked like he'd aged a decade in 6 months. They turned as I entered, hope flickering in their eyes. I chose a seat several rows behind them. The gulf between us felt appropriate. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Catherine Walsh, began with establishing Max's credentials. On the screen, my brother looked different. Prison had stripped away his cockiness, leaving someone hollow-eyed and remorseful. Mr. Reynolds, Walsh began, please tell the grand jury how you first became involved with Vincent Torino's organization. Max's testimony was devastating in its detail. He explained a progression from sports betting to underground poker games, from borrowing money to selling information. He named names, provided dates, described meetings in warehouse basements and parking garages. The data theft from Henderson Financial, Walsh prompted. Tell us about that. It started small, Max said, his voice cracking. Just a few names and social security numbers to reduce my debt, but they kept wanting more. Anthony Torino said I could clear my entire debt with one big score. What was the big score? The entire private client database. Over 10,000 high-net-worth individuals with complete financial profiles. Gasps echoed through the viewing room. Even I hadn't known the full scope. Did you provide this information? No. That's when I started recording conversations. I knew I was in too deep. But I thought if I had leverage. You thought you could blackmail them. Walsh finished. I thought I could protect myself. Max looked directly at the camera. I was wrong. They found out about the recordings and threatened my family. That's when I went to my father for help. The testimony continued for 3 hours. Max detailed the structure of Torino's organization, the money laundering methods, the connections to other crime families. He produced documents, identified voices on recordings, and laid bare a criminal enterprise that had operated for over a decade. When Walsh asked about the impact on his family, Max broke down completely. "I destroyed everything," he sobbed. "My sister lost her medical school fund because of me. My parents lost their home, their retirement, their reputation. I took a family that loved me and tore it apart for money I threw away on stupid bets." "Do you take responsibility for your actions?" "Yes, all of it. I'm a thief, a liar, and I betrayed everyone who ever cared about me. Almeida worked 3 jobs to save for school while I was stealing from innocent people. She's everything I should have been." I found myself crying despite my anger. My mother turned around, reaching toward me, but I shook my head. This wasn't about forgiveness. It was about truth. The testimony shifted to specific transactions, and that's when the biggest revelation came. Max had actually won $500,000 6 months before taking my college fund. But instead of paying his debts, he'd lost it all, chasing an even bigger score. "You could have walked away," Walsh stated. "I know. God, I know. But I was sick. Addicted. I convinced myself the next bet would set me up for life. Meanwhile, your family was preparing to sacrifice everything for debts you could have paid." Yes, the word hung in the air like a death sentence. When court recessed, I stepped into the hallway for air. Jonathan found me leaning against a window, staring at the Chicago skyline. "How are you holding up?" "He had $500,000, I said numbly. "He could have paid everything and had money left over." "Addiction isn't logical, Almeida. It's a sickness." "I know, but knowing doesn't make it hurt less." "No, it doesn't." Agent Morrison approached us. "Torino's lawyer is negotiating a plea deal. Between Max's testimony and the others who flipped, he's looking at 25 to life. He'll take a deal. So it's really over the criminal case." "Yes, but there's something else." She handed me an envelope. "The asset forfeiture from Torino's organization has been approved. Victim compensation will begin next month." I opened the envelope with trembling hands. The number at the bottom made me gasp. $650,000. RICO allows for treble damages, Morrison explained. "Your initial loss times 3, plus interest." "I can go to medical school," I whispered. "I can actually go." Jonathan smiled. "Columbia's holding your spot. I spoke to admissions last week." The afternoon brought more testimony, including my parents taking the stand to corroborate Max's timeline. They admitted to enabling his addiction, to ignoring warning signs, to choosing the path of least resistance rather than getting him help. During a break, I encountered my father in the hallway. He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I know you hate us," he said quietly, "and you have every right to. But I want you to know that I'm proud of you, for standing up to us, for refusing to enable the sickness that consumed our family. I don't hate you, Dad. I hate what you did. There's a difference. Is there any chance, any possibility, that someday you might forgive us?" I considered the question. I don't know. Maybe. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean we go back to being a family. I understand. Do you? Because Mom still texts me every day asking when I'm coming home. She's struggling to accept reality. We're in therapy now, trying to understand how we became people who would steal from one child to save another. Are you learning anything? He smiled sadly, that we mistook enabling for love, that we were so afraid of losing Max that we lost you instead, that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the consequences of their actions. Yeah, well, better late than never, I guess. We stood in awkward silence until he spoke again. The house sold. After the mortgage and legal fees, there wasn't much left. But I set aside something. He pulled out a check. "It's only $5,000, but it's yours. No strings, no expectations. Just something toward your future." I stared at the check. $5,000, a fraction of what they'd taken. but somehow significant in its symbolism. This is from your personal account. Yes, money I earned doing overtime at the plant. Your mother doesn't even know about it. I pocketed the check. Thank you. Almeida. Dad, we're not there yet. Maybe we never will be. But this is a start. The final testimony of the day came from Vincent Torino himself, who had indeed taken a plea deal. 20 years in federal prison, forfeiture of all assets, and full cooperation against his associates. Watching him on the screen, this man who had terrorized my family, I expected to feel satisfaction. Instead, I felt empty. He was just another criminal who'd preyed on people's weaknesses. Max's weakness had opened the door, but Torino had walked through it eagerly. As the proceedings ended, Catherine Walsh approached me. Miss Reynolds, I wanted to personally thank you. Your courage in coming forward started this entire investigation. I just wanted my money back. You got much more than that. 14 members of a major crime syndicate are going to prison. Hundreds of identity theft victims will receive compensation. Your brother's testimony is the cornerstone of all of it. That evening, I had dinner with Jonathan at a quiet restaurant near the courthouse. We'd become friends over these months, bonded by the strange journey of seeking justice. So what now? He asked. Medical school in the fall. That's the plan, although it feels surreal. 6 months ago, I was sleeping on Rachel's couch with $17 to my name. You've come a long way, with a lot of help. I raised my wine glass. Thank you for everything. You're the one who did the hard work, facing your family, testifying, refusing to back down, even when they threatened you. Speaking of which, any word on Anthony Torino? Arrested in Miami, trying to flee the country. He'll be tried separately but with his uncle. Cooperating, he's looking at significant time. Relief washed over me. The man who'd stalked me, threatened me, made me afraid to leave the house. He was behind bars. There's something else, Jonathan said, producing an envelope. This came to my office. It's addressed to you. I recognized Max's handwriting immediately. Inside was a single page, his words careful and measured. Almeida, I know a letter can't undo what I've done. I stole your future because I was too weak to face my own failures. You worked for everything while I looked for shortcuts. You saved while I squandered. You built while I destroyed. I'm going to prison for a long time. I've accepted that. What I can't accept is that you might not achieve your dreams because of me. So, I'm giving you the only thing I have left, my testimony and full cooperation to ensure you receive every penny owed to you. I don't ask for forgiveness. I haven't earned it. But I want you to know that watching you fight for your future when I tried to steal, it has taught me more about strength than anything else in my life. Become the Dr. Grandma Eleanor knew you could be. Save lives, help people, be everything I failed to be. Your brother, who doesn't deserve the title Max. I folded the letter carefully, tears blurring my vision. He actually gets it. Growth often comes from our lowest moments, Jonathan observed. Do you think he'll be okay in prison? He's in protective custody, and with his cooperation, he'll likely serve in a minimum security facility. He'll have access to education programs, therapy, addiction counseling. If he truly wants to change, he'll have the opportunity. As we finished dinner, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here. Betrayal had shattered my family and stolen my dreams. But in fighting back, I'd found strength I didn't know I had. I'd learned to stand up for myself, to refuse to be collateral damage in someone else's destruction. The money would come soon. Medical school would follow. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was the knowledge that when everything fell apart, I didn't break. I rebuilt. And that was worth more than any college fund. 6 months later, I stood in front of the mirror in my new studio apartment, carefully adjusting the white coat that bore my name, Almeida Reynolds, medical student. The embroidered letters seemed surreal, even now, 3 weeks into my first semester at Columbia. The morning sun streamed through windows that overlooked the Hudson River, a view I'd never imagined I could afford. But the Victim Compensation Fund had come through as promised, along with the settlement from Henderson Financial's insurance company. After setting aside money for all 4 years of medical school, I'd invested the rest conservatively on Jonathan's advice. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Today's the day. Knock. Am dead at your presentation." I smiled, grateful for her unwavering support. She'd moved to Manhattan, too, landing a job at a major marketing firm. We had dinner every Sunday, a tradition that grounded me in this new life. The presentation she mentioned was for my medical ethics class. The professor had asked me to speak about my experience with financial crime. It felt strange to turn my family's destruction into an academic case study. But my story had already helped shape new policies at financial institutions regarding employee monitoring and client data protection. As I gathered my materials, my laptop chimed with a video call. I hesitated before accepting. Monthly calls with my parents had become routine, though they remained strained. "Hi, honey." My mother's face appeared on screen. She looked healthier than she had during the trial, though sadness still lingered in her eyes. "You look wonderful in your coat." "Thanks, Mom." My father joined her on screen. They were in their small apartment's kitchen, the same mismatched furniture they'd salvaged after losing the house. "Big presentation today." "Yes. Professor Williams thinks it could be published in the Medical Ethics Journal." "That's wonderful," my mother said, then hesitated. "We have some news." My stomach tensed. News from them rarely meant anything good. "We heard from Max yesterday," my father continued. "He's completed his addiction counseling certification. He's going to start leading group sessions for other inmates." "That's good," I managed. Max was serving 7 years, reduced from 20 due to his cooperation. He wrote me letters I didn't answer, sent drawings I didn't acknowledge. Maybe someday I'd be ready to engage with him again. Not yet. "He also wanted us to tell you something," my mother said carefully. "The educational program he's in, he's teaching financial literacy to other inmates. He calls it Eleanor's Fund, after your grandmother." Something twisted in my chest. He named it after Grandma. He says every class starts with her story, how she saved carefully her whole life to give her granddaughter a future, how he stole that future and destroyed his family. He uses it to teach about the real costs of financial crimes. I didn't know how to respond to that. My grandmother would have appreciated the gesture, even while disapproving of the circumstances that created it. "We should let you go," my father said, recognizing my discomfort. "Good luck with your presentation." "Thanks." "Almeida." My mother's voice caught. "We love you. Always." "I know," I said, which was all I could offer. After ending the call, I took a moment to center myself. On my desk sat a framed photo of Grandma Eleanor at my high school graduation. Beside it was the letter she'd hidden for me, now laminated and precious. "I'm doing it, Grandma," I whispered. "Just like you wanted." The presentation went better than expected. I stood before 200 fellow medical students and faculty, telling my story without flinching. How financial desperation could corrupt families. How addiction could hide behind success. How healthcare professionals needed to recognize these patterns in their patients. "Medical debt is the leading cause of bankruptcy in America," I explained, clicking through slides Jonathan had helped me prepare. When people face financial ruin due to medical bills, they become vulnerable to the same predators who targeted my family. As future physicians, we have a responsibility to understand not just the physical health of our patients, but their financial health, too. Professor Williams nodded approvingly from the front row. Several students took notes furiously. In the back, I spotted a familiar face. Catherine Walsh, the prosecutor who'd handled Max's case. During the Q&A, a student asked, "How do you forgive family members who betray you like that?" The question I'd been dreading. I don't know that I have forgiven them, I admitted. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a process, and I'm still in it. What I've learned is that you can love someone while maintaining boundaries. You can want them to heal while protecting yourself from further harm. Another student raised her hand. Do you regret turning your family in? No, I said firmly. Staying silent would have made me complicit. By speaking up, I not only reclaimed my future, but potentially saved hundreds of others from identity theft. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable destructive behavior. After the presentation, Catherine Walsh approached me. That was powerful, Almeida. You've come a long way from that scared young woman in the federal building. I had good teachers, I replied. How is the case progressing? Torino's organization is completely dismantled. We've recovered over $30 million in stolen assets. Your brother's testimony was instrumental, and he's safe as anyone can be in federal prison. His cooperation bought him protection and respect from the authorities, if not from other inmates. She handed me her card. If you're ever interested in forensic medicine or working with financial crime victims, call me. We could use someone with your unique perspective. That evening, I attended a gathering Jonathan had organized for victims of Torino's crimes. It was strange being in a room full of people whose lives had been touched by my brother's actions. Some knew my connection, others didn't, but we all shared the bond of survival. I want to make an announcement, Jonathan said, raising his glass. Thanks to the collective efforts of everyone in this room, we've established the Financial Crime Victims Education Fund. It will provide resources and support for those affected by identity theft and financial fraud. Applause filled the room. An older gentleman approached me afterward. You're Max's sister, aren't you? I tensed. Yes. My identity was one of those stolen from Henderson Financial. For months, I blamed your brother entirely. But hearing your story, understanding the web of addiction and crime that trapped your whole family, it helped me find peace. I'm glad, I said, meaning it. Is it true he's teaching financial literacy in prison? Apparently, yes. The man smiled sadly. Good. Maybe some good can come from all this pain. As the evening wound down, I found myself on a balcony overlooking the city. Jonathan joined me, comfortable silence stretching between us. Any regrets? He finally asked. About what? All of it. Coming forward, the investigation, testifying against your family. I considered the question. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that my parents chose enabling over intervention. I regret that Max's addiction caused so many people so much. But no, I don't regret my choices. And medical school, living up to expectations. It's hard, I admitted. Some days I feel like I'm carrying not just my dreams, but my grandmother's and all the people who helped me get here. But then I work with patients at the clinic, and I remember why I wanted this. To help, to heal, to be someone people can trust with their lives. Your grandmother would be proud. I hope so. My phone buzzed with another text from Rachel. Sunday dinner. That new Thai place? I smiled and responded, wouldn't miss it. Life had found a rhythm. Classes, studying, clinical rotations. Sunday dinners with Rachel. Monthly video calls with my parents. Occasional meetings with former victims, finding their own paths forward. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but perhaps it was richer for its complexity. 2 weeks later, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a leather journal and a note in Max's handwriting. For your future patients' stories. May they all have better endings than mine. I ran my fingers over the smooth leather, debating whether to keep it. In the end, I placed it on my bookshelf. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But acknowledgement that people could change, could grow, could find purpose even in their failures. That night, I wrote the first entry. Today, a patient asked me why I became a doctor. I told her it was because I learned that healing isn't just about medicine. It's about understanding how money, Addiction, family, and choices intersect to create both illness and recovery. She said that sounded like wisdom earned through pain. She wasn't wrong. As winter settled over New York, I prepared for my first set of medical school finals. The material was challenging but manageable. After everything I'd overcome, molecular biology and anatomy seemed almost simple. One evening, while studying in the library, I overheard two classmates discussing their financial struggles. "I might have to drop out," one said. "My dad lost his job and the loans aren't enough." "Have you talked to financial aid?" the other asked. "They can't do anything more." I closed my textbook and approached them. "Excuse me," I couldn't help overhearing. "There's a new fund for students facing financial hardship due to family circumstances. Can I give you the information?" Hope bloomed on the student's face. "Really?" I hadn't heard about it. I pulled out Catherine Walsh's card and wrote down the fund information. "They helped me when my family situation imploded. They might be able to help you too." As I walked back to my apartment that night, snow beginning to fall, I thought about the strange journey that had brought me here. From that horrible moment in my childhood bedroom when my parents announced they'd stolen my future, to standing in a courtroom watching justice be served, to wearing a white coat and helping others navigate their own crises. The money had been recovered. The criminals were in prison. The wounds were slowly healing. But the most valuable thing I'd gained wasn't financial. It was the knowledge that I could survive betrayal, fight for justice, and still choose compassion. My phone rang. "Jonathan, bad time?" he asked. "Just walking home." "What's up?" "I have a student who needs help. Family members stole their identity, racked up massive debt." "Sound familiar?" "Unfortunately, yes. Send them my information. I'll meet with them this weekend." "You sure? Your finals are coming up. Some things are more important than exams. Eleanor would be proud of you, you know." I smiled, snowflakes catching on my eyelashes. "I know." As I reached my building, I turned back to look at the city lights reflected on the snow. Somewhere across town, my parents were probably having dinner in their small kitchen, finding their own path to redemption. Somewhere in a federal prison, my brother was teaching other inmates about financial responsibility. And somewhere in Chicago, Patricia Holbrook was probably helping another young person open their first savings account. We were all different people than we'd been 2 years ago, broken and rebuilt, scarred but stronger, a family destroyed by greed and addiction, finding separate paths to healing. I thought about the question my classmate had asked during my presentation. How do you forgive? Maybe the answer was that you don't have to forgive to move forward. Maybe it was enough to transform pain into purpose, betrayal into boundaries, loss into the determination to help others avoid the same fate. My phone buzzed one more time. A notification from the bank. The final payment from the Victim Compensation Fund had been deposited. The last financial tie to that dark chapter of my life. I deleted the notification and climbed the stairs to my apartment. Tomorrow brought more classes, more patience, more opportunities to build the future my grandmother had envisioned. Not despite what happened, but because of how I'd chosen to respond to it. In my apartment, I opened the leather journal Max had sent and wrote one more line. Today, I chose to see my scars not as wounds, but as proof of survival. Tomorrow, I'll teach others to do the same. The story I've shared with you is mine, but it could be anyone's. Family betrayal, financial crime, and the struggle to reclaim a stolen future affect thousands of people every day. If you face similar challenges, know that you're not alone. Your dreams matter. Your future is worth fighting for. And sometimes the family you choose, the mentors, friends, and advocates who support your journey, can heal wounds the family you're born into created. What would you do if your own family chose favoritism over fairness, stealing your future in the process? Have you ever had to fight for what's yours against impossible odds? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories.